riding a horse. Fun for me is not. I'm different. Not getting on a stage.
That is fun for me.
I wouldn't say fun,
for you, yeah.
but what I would do is if I got the job, because I'm competitive, and I do get such a high. Fun for me is if I went out there and nailed it. That high that you get is a tremendous high. That it's like I banged it out of the park, or I did well. So I feel really good about doing that. But fun for me is still being with my dogs and riding a horse.
I just have to ask you this one question. If you don't want to go into it, it's fine.
That's all right.
And here I am in front of a mic, so it really isn't fair, but I can't help it. So sane. You do. You sound so sane. And I heard this, so maybe it's not true. Did you ever have like a date with Robert Blake? Maybe 2 dates? Maybe 3?
He's too old for you.
We've never discussed this.
You don't have to discuss it now if you don't want to.
No, and she told somebody, and
I told somebody?
No, get this. No, you were fine. No, get this. No. Listen, this is
go
all
ahead,
okay.
go ahead.
This is all okay. It's a really scary story.
Honey,
so I was, for whatever reason, my brain, that's why I don't remember everything. I can't remember lots of these shows, and I just block out stuff. So for whatever reason, I had a few dates with Robert Blake.
Oh, a few dates.
A few days.
He's old enough to be your father.
Forget the age.
Okay, sorry.
But do you remember him, though? What was the great movie he and Robert Redford?
Tell
them.
And Robert Redford?
Tell the Willie Boys here?
Yes.
What?
Yeah,
what?
Tell the Willie Boys.
He was like an
I never
Indian.
saw it.
Oh, it's fabulous. He was like a guy or something that was running away. And anything Robert Redford.
Yeah, you're too young to know that movie, too.
But in all honesty, which I'm not going to talk about on air, but in all honesty...
Yeah, I was just thinking. I'd heard you did, and I was thinking, okay, because I didn't know you. I'm like, wow,
out of that situation.
But then, as I know you, I'm like, when we have, especially in Chicago, I was like,
so when he
don't put that together,
right?
You know?
So when that happened with him, and
you're
he was
like,
accused
yeah,
of this, that, and the other. Wow, honey.
Yeah, because you're so smart.
Wow.
Would you tell us the story about John Ritter after his passing and the penny? And pennies. I love this story. Can you tell this story?
Sort of depends on your audience and what their
I don't know
spiritual beliefs are.
They're in the clouds.
Well, I have a great...
I would love... I'm very spiritual.
Have you heard this
story? No. It just everybody
Rich,
has...
have you told this story?
Yeah, go.
No, I don't. There isn't really a specific story. I just...
If you feel uncomfortable, you don't have to tell it.
Just everybody has different spiritual beliefs, whether that's a traditional religion or metaphysics or whatever.
Hopefully.
But... information was given to me, not necessarily from someone wearing a physical body, that said that John had some things he wanted to say to me, and they shared what they thought he wanted to say, and that he would leave pennies to say hello. And at extremely improbable moments where there couldn't possibly be change on the ground or in a drawer that I've opened 50 times in the last month, whatever, there will be a shiny penny at just a critical moment of my thinking, or a moment of extreme vulnerability where I'm trying to reason something in myself and make an appropriate conscious. And I'll be driving in the car and I'm ruminating on that confusion, and I park and open the door and put my foot out onto the ground to get out, and I look down next to my foot is this shiny penny.
And does he still send you pennies?
Yes.
Does it matter if it's
he
heads or
just sent
tails?
one, actually. No, it doesn't matter.
And he just
sent one yesterday. And it was like, and I had been in the place I was in just yesterday.
In Santa Fe?
Yeah.
And where was the penny?
In the airport.
In the airport.
In the airport. And I had been sitting where I was sitting for some time, and it was there, and I was here. And at some point, I became aware, and I went,
there he is.
Thank you. It's like he was saying hello to all of us.
That's...
Well,
Everybody should believe in that story. It would be a much more beautiful world all the time for everybody.
You saw that play that he did, right? The one a New York
never saw it.
Oh,
party.
so good. Dinner at 8.
No.
Dinner at 8, is that correct title, Richard? It's two couples, and it is about dinner at 8.
With Henry Winkler.
That's a different title, isn't it? Dinner Party. Is that it?
Simon? Have you worked for Neil Simon?
For Neil Simon?
Yeah, but
but I've done 6 Neil Simon plays.
I directed the one at the Whitefire. What was it with Bernie Coppell? Rumors. Yeah. And I heard that was amazing.
And Neil came to it. The night it had been running. It ran for I think around 11 months. at the Whitefire Theater on
Yeah, it's a great
Ventura.
theater. It's the most popular
And-
theater in the valley.
And one of the last weeks of the performance, we found out that Neil was coming, so I had a brush-up rehearsal, whatever. But Neil came with Wayne Rogers, Dick Van Dyke, and Jack Klugman.
Oh, wow.
And I remember I could see from backstage, I just sort of could see the row they were in. It was the Mount Rushmore of comedy.
Yeah.
Now, you weren't in the play. You directed it. Okay,
directed.
yeah.
And then he took photos with us afterwards, and I subsequently worked at the Geffen with Wayne Rogers, and I reminded him
Yes,
that
you
I
did.
had directed Rumors, and he said, "Well, I invested in Rumors on Broadway," and he said this production was better.
Yay, honey.
Wow.
With
Well
Bernie
done.
Bernie
Well
Coppell.
done.
Yeah, who else was in it? I
The
know
gl-
because I worked with him. I love. I mean, don't you love Bernie Coppell? I mean, he's
Yeah,
great.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah,
who else.
lovely guy.
Do you know my story about Neil Simon and Rumors? I was hired for it.
Oh, I think you told me that.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
yes, yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes, yes,
I was hired for it. I told you that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I auditioned for him at the Mark Taper, and he couldn't because he looked at my resume and said, "How do you?" And it was that the role that I played was Ken Howard's wife that opens in the second act. So it's just one, not heavy in the second act,
The
but it's that
senator's
big
wife.
long,
Yeah.
senator's wife. So and he kept looking at my resume, going, "How do you know how to do this? Because it doesn't show in your resume that I would, know how to do it." So anyway, long story short, so he hires me, but he goes, "We have to send you back to meet with Gene."
Sachs.
Thank you, Gene Sachs, and he's a really nice producer, Manny Eisenberg.
Hazenberg, yes.
And so he goes, "It's just a formality, blah blah blah." So I go back there and I read for Gene Sachs and Manny Eisenberg, and it was like in chorus line. The theater was dark. I mean, you couldn't see anybody or anything, So I did it the way, obviously, you do it the way that you read for Neil, right? I mean, if Neil liked it, shit, Okay. And so I did it again, and then I kept getting all these direction from the back of the theater. Try it all the opposite of what I had done. And here I am thinking about all the energy of the floorboards, the whole actor thing. And I'm thinking, God, well, I guess he wants to set me my paces, to see if I can take direction and blah, blah, blah. Then all of a sudden, he stops after about giving me 8 different, ways to do it. And it's really quiet. And then I hear his footsteps. And then he finally, and it's Gene. Sachs. So I finally see somebody, not a disembodied voice. And he sits right in the front row, right in front of me, and crosses his legs. And he says, "You've done Three's Company." And I said, "Yes." And, you were married to, B. Arthur. I mean, retarded. And so then you wait, and then he goes, "I'm going to send you back to can you spend the night, the hotel?" I said, "Yeah, okay." So Manny called me and said, "Don't worry, everything's okay. We just still have to talk about it." And I didn't get the job. And my boyfriend at the time was really good friends with Marcia Mason, and she was the one that told him that there's the 3 Jews connected at the hip, and that Gene, that Neil had hired me without talking to them first.
It's okay.
Isn't that shitty?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't have told this because it's my story, and I
No,
really
but
want
it's
to focus on you.
it's
But
unfortunate when egos get in the way of doing the best that
Show
can be done for
business
the
is still
show.
full of
no, but it's just
right?
like
Everybody has.
No, but then he did Jake's Women, and brought me in for that.
You like
But
it?
after I read, he asked me out for dinner.
Well,
And did you get that job?
No, because I said I don't feel really, comfortable.
You didn't want it, so you
going
didn't go out to
dinner.
dinner, right? So
I
then
went
you
out to
didn't-
dinner,
Oh, you did.
but have you ever seen men with hairs on their Knuckles.
fingers, the joints, and everything.
Yeah. So and it was fascinating because here I am sitting having dinner with the most prolific playwright at that time. You know what I mean? I'm thinking, wow, this is fabulous. He doesn't really talk about that. He really talks a lot about himself and his wives. And so there was the hair thing, and I was like, wow, how's that work? That would be that'd be hard. I mean, it would be. I mean, I know, but the listeners out there, if you're thinking, if you want to get laid, you
Bridget,
gotta,
let me see your knuckles.
No, they wax their back, but you gotta wax,
His knuckles are
wax your
beautiful.
knuckles.
His hands
No,
are
forget your back
gorgeous.
and your buttocks. It's the knuckles because that's what we see first. So no, I didn't get that job, and I didn't go back with Neil. But I mean, anyway, I digress. I'm sorry. Would you tell us about Liberace?
Mr. Liberace. All
Can
right,
you
Richard,
do that?
come on.
I know it's a quickie.
Did you have a thing with Liberace?
No, he's doing the Broadway show.
Oh.
And actually, didn't we see part of it? Didn't you do a little tiny run because we saw it? Or did I dream it?
No, I think you dreamed that.
You were never.
You're talking about.
I thought I was because I saw you. When
It's a musical.
But but didn't you do a couple of words or a couple of songs or something from it sometime off Broadway somewhere? Joyce, didn't we see it together?
No, you did
No,
not.
honey, happening and shit
Come
happening.
on, you
You
were
did
in that. You were,
But it's called.
It's being heated up again. There was a workshop 4 years ago. The money fell through, and it's starting to heat up again.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. And if it does, you're invited to opening night.
Good. It
He's
should happen,
brilliant.
Richard.
He's
It should.
brilliant, and he's looking for investors. So if anybody's a huge fan of Liberace,
Yeah, what I just flashed on was your Boy Chick. And
Oh, that was a solo.
yeah,
you're
that was fabulous.
so marvelous on stage.
Yeah, that
Richard.
was a one-man show, which you also wrote.
No, I did not write that.
Oh,
And I know
well,
we
you should just
talked.
stick with it and just say okay because
And
it
it-
was really good.
And I just want to say, we talked about Jenilee coming onto the show and how.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
But how wonderful and marvelous she was, and having her there was so great. But man, Priscilla, when
What?
you came on the show,
I didn't think you liked me,
No, well, the first year we didn't get to know each other. The second year we became best friends.
and then
the
we
first
smoking
season.
in the third. Yeah.
But when people talk to me about, aside from the fact that we loved you and loved working with you, when people talk to me about their from the show, it is 99% of the time once you had come on board. It's those shows in the last 4 years.
I know
They
you're-
loved your addition
You're
to the
so
show.
protective of me.
But it's so true. I'm not making that up. It is usually 99% of the time they will talk about an episode that you were involved in.
if we're
So
signing
you
an
added
autograph,
to our show. You guys added to our show.
If we're
when
signing
it
an
came out.
autograph, if like Suzanne is in it, she goes, I don't want to sign that, and then she'll whip out another group photo that I'm in. I mean, she doesn't want to sign it. She's very, very, very
Supportive,
protective of me.
and
I've
that's
never
awesome.
met Suzanne. I mean, I've never met me. I do remember that whole thing with. I mean, that is a kind of a funny thing.
I met her once. Want to hear how I met her? Is that they were doing a pilot and called She's the Sheriff.
Yeah.
And I was hired for it, and so was John
right.
Knotts. And it was a spin-off from a show
No,
she
we
was
know it
doing
well.
or something.
They Joyce turned it down. Guess who they hired? Me.
Karen
Step down.
Valentine or
I
something?
got
was
out
in
of it
Or,
because the producer, Mark, whatever his name was, who lived in the
Hit on
West
you,
Coast.
didn't he?
Oh, he was married and he wanted to have an affair. And I tried to
my
be like a sister.
gosh.
I'm like, really? You're going to direct every other one? You're the actual creator, the writer, and you want to fuck the star? Mark, that's an awful lot to do. And I mean, but
so I walked
it
into
didn't
that.
work.
So I walked into that
So we're
show
responsible for Suzanne because nobody would hire her then coming back. I mean,
and
it's
doing the
interesting.
show. So you guys were working on the show that she was doing, which was called.
No, she
Or
took
was
our
she the-
place because I was
wait,
going to
so
get
whatever
sued by
that-
Laura
was
Mark.
So
Okay,
the
anyway.
show that Suzanne was in was
She's
that
the sheriff.
Okay, so there was this.
I
my
got out of
show-
it, and then she did
Okay,
it.
so
Okay.
I did a spin-off from She's the Sheriff. That's
You
what
did?
I'm talking about.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I didn't
Go
know.
ahead.
Yeah, so
Tell
no,
us
but
this.
that's so I don't. So yeah, I got that.
I'm sorry,
that-
I'm
it was
sorry.
her. So anyway, they were doing this spin-off from She's the Sheriff that I was
Uh-huh.
hired to do with Don Knotts and Karen Valentine.
Oh my God.
But it was like, so there had to be one episode where she
Trent
spins it
was
off
in
or
both.
whatever.
Oh, okay.
And I had never met her.
Uh-huh.
And I heard, but I didn't even know. So anyway, you go in, they all escort us into the big read room.
Uh-huh.
So all of a sudden, everybody's in there, we're all around the round table, and all of a sudden, like, Suzanne walks in, and they say, without, because I didn't know she was going to be there, and she didn't know I was going to be there, whatever, so the producers thought it was really funny, and they said, oh, Suzanne, have you met your replacement,
Oh, God.
Jenilee Harrison?
They
And
did
again-
that to you guys?
Yeah. And again, so it's like the dum like, is that funny? And
No.
and I just sat there and I continued and I did the whole read. And afterwards, so I've seen in print about again how they did that and how that it was again very unkind to her, whatever. And again, I just try to
Did
go.
she
You know
ever
what?
talk
just
to
do the
you?
work.
So you never
She
talked to
came
her?
up. afterwards, and we talked for about 10 minutes. And she just kind of asked me something about, maybe did you know what was going on or anything? I said, you know what? I didn't know a thing. Like, you didn't know a thing.